This computer. Okay, good evening. Welcome to this session of our marathon course. And on the screen, we have our course overview, just to remind ourselves of where we are yet to go. So we started off by looking at project management, and like I said, it's important even as a BA to at least have project management skills. It's important as a project manager to at least have BA skills. So on this platform, we'll look at both. There's also the aspect of PMO, which is Program Project Management Office. That is the central office that supports project management teams, program management teams. So that's another career path that we will look at on this platform. So far, we looked at an introduction to project management, looking at what a project is, the fact that projects bring about change or are initiated to implement change in organizations. And it doesn't matter what type of organization it is, whenever there's a change, you find that even though they don't recognize the team as a project team, you find that they put together a team to accomplish a particular task within a set time and with a set budget, with a set structure, with clear roles and responsibilities and all that. So it's important for us to know what a project is so that we can relate or connect that with management. So if we look, those who have studied management is basically the leading, organizing, controlling of organizational resources and all that. So project management is that function or that role within an organization that manages, that leads, that organizes, making sure that people know what they do. And we said for project management professionals to be effective, whether you're a BA, a PMO, or project manager, project planner, project coordinator, for you to be effective, you need to follow a particular framework or methodology. So we looked at quite a number of methodologies. We looked at the waterfall methodology, which is linear and sequential in nature. So step by step, you cannot implement step number 2 before completing step number 1. You cannot implement step number 3 before completing step number 2. If you make a mistake in step number 3, it means you have to go back to step number 1 in order for you to correct that. So we said the methodology is still in use. You see some job descriptions that still require people who can implement projects within a waterfall environment. Why? Because in a situation where you know exactly what you want, maybe the project is not that big, it has been done before, it's easy for you as an organization to think about what you want at once in one stage, and then you go and develop in one go, and then test in one go. Some organizations still do that. We also looked at hold on one second, let me look for my mouse. Okay, sorry about that. So, okay, we looked at I would like to bring up the agile approach. Okay, so that's the waterfall. Then that's the software development life cycle. So we said in some organizations and in some projects, they will tell you that we want knowledge about the software development life cycle, because if it's a software project, there is a methodology specifically for software projects. So it's just like in any area, in any subject matter, you find that people come up with this framework. Other people think, there's a weakness in terms of this particular framework. Let me make it my PhD or master's thesis, dissertation. They research, they publish. So the same applies to all these methodologies. Somebody came up with a waterfall methodology. Then someone thought, for software, I think the waterfall is not adequate. This is what I think is adequate, software development life cycle. And then somebody came and thought, waterfall, not effective. Software on its own, software development life cycle on its own, still not effective. So what do we do? Let's talk about agile. So somebody commissioned the research, published papers, and I don't know how they tested their hypothesis and all that. But there's quite a lot more. You hear people talk about agile, Kanban, people, I think there's now another level of agile called scaled agile framework. There is quite a lot of methodologies, but at this stage, don't worry about them. It's important to know the waterfall. It's important to know the software development life cycle. It's important to know the agile Scrum methodology. And we said Scrum comes from the game of rugby, where people come together. I don't know what they'll be doing in the game of rugby, but in this particular situation, we have a cross-functional team, as in we have different roles: business analysts, developers, we have testers, we have delivery managers, project managers, we have change people, all working together in one, as part of a team to develop whatever they are developing. So we said agile is more flexible. There is more involvement of the customer throughout the process, and the customer is represented by the product owner, who signs off or agrees to what goes into the product backlog, which is like a list of the business requirements, a list of what is required in terms of features and all that. And this product backlog is written in the form of what we call epics and user stories. We'll look at that later when we do business analysis. And then we said, once we have this bucket of requirements, because we develop in sprints, we develop in bits, we develop in sprints. So from this bucket of requirements, we select just a few with the guidance of the product owner, develop the few until such a time that we have finished those few. So for example, if you are developing, let's say construction, for example, most people think agile is used only for IT. Of late, people use agile for non-IT projects. So even for construction, maybe we can take laying the foundation as a sprint. So the team works on the foundation. When the foundation is finished, we can say we have a finished product or finished work. Then next, the walls up to window level, finished product. And then there is the placement of the windows until we have one completed house or room. So Agile is the most favorite methodology at the moment because one, it allows the customer to be involved throughout the process, and it's flexible, and the customer gets to see finished products at different stages, maybe every 2 weeks, depending on how long your sprint is, or every week, depending on how long your sprint is. Then we said on this particular platform, we're going to combine the methodologies. And you find that even out there, you will see people combining methodologies. For example, going through the first 2 stages to make sure that the project is properly set up, the project is justifiable, the project team is in place, everybody knows what their roles and responsibilities are. So even on this platform, when we get to the point where we have finished BA training, we will regroup in the, let's see how many. We'll group you into project teams. A project team doesn't need to have 600 people. Sometimes a project team can just be a project manager and a BA, or project manager, BA, and quality assurance. Sometimes you find that a project team has got 30 people. I've managed project teams of 30 people. So don't worry if you look at the number of attendees and you see 5. It means there's going to be quite a lot of work to do, like Gladness will testify. That's the only downfall. But on the other hand, it means you get involved in everything and you learn everything. The whole purpose of this platform is for you to learn and to do. Once you learn and do, no interview will ever be difficult for you. People will be calling you, you won't need to apply for jobs, but it takes learning and then doing. It is the doing that will cement the knowledge. So we are going to use this methodology where we'll start up our project, we'll initiate our project, we'll go into implementation following the software development life cycle for each sprint. And then we'll test whatever we're developing. Once we test and agree, we deploy and close the project. So this is the methodology to print and paste on your fridge door, your bedroom door, wherever, so that at least it gets into your system. You can talk about it, what happens in startup, which we're going to do next. So we also went this far just to explain further the hybrid methodology, what happens, the various phases. Remember when we spoke about Prince 2, we said a project has to be implemented in phases. So starting up is a phase with activities, the initiation phase with activities, implementation phase with further sub phases, which we're going to explain in the form of a table later, testing, deploying, closing a project. That's all, these are phases. So the hybrid methodology is important. So we're still looking at the hybrid methodology. Now we're looking at each stage or phase. So when you talk project management language, you talk in the form, you refer to phases, managing project, implementing project in phases, we are in starting up stage, we are in starting up phase, and all that. So we want to look at each stage, what happens in each stage, who is responsible, and what are the deliverables. So this is not theory, it's what we do out there. But once again, you adapt this to your project, you adapt this to your company. So when, not if, when you get that role as a project manager and or BA, and you realize that your new employer doesn't have 5 phases or 4 phases, don't start to criticize them. They would have adapted this methodology to their organization. Just like we learned under the Prince2 methodology that it's important, or it's a requirement, that each methodology is adapted to the requirements of the organization. Okay, so what happens in the starting up phase? Let's say you are offered a role somewhere in Canary Wharf or somewhere in the city of Chelmsford, and they say you are the project manager. We follow the hybrid methodology. Sometimes that's the only information that you get. This is the project that we want you to implement. We want you to construct a road from Romford to Chadwell Heath. That's your project. Where do you start? Where do you start? So they will tell you what they want you to do. So that's the construction of the road from Romford to Chadwell Heath. So that's what we call a project mandate. So you receive your project mandate, like we see in this blue thing. It says phase 1, project management, project mandate is received. The mandate can be just an email. It could be in a meeting. We have recruited you, Chris. We would like you to manage this road construction. We are giving you a budget of 60 million pounds, not naira. Then what do you do? They won't give you much detail. For example, for roads, is it a dual carriageway? How many lanes? Is it 6 on each side? They won't give you much detail. So the first thing that you do is to make sure that the project is defined whilst you are assembling your project team. Sometimes there won't be anybody else other than yourself as a project manager. So it means you need to, as you define the project, you are also defining what resources you're going to require. You might immediately need a business analyst, or they might say, we're not employing a BA. We expect you to write a business case. We expect you to write the project brief. You will find that. So it's not in every situation where you're going to have the luxury of having a BA as a project manager, but every BA has to work with a project manager. But as a project manager, you'll find yourself having to produce some of the documents that we assign or have assigned to BAs on this platform. As a result, I always say, get involved in everything. So you define your project, and how you define your project is by starting to prepare a project brief. A project brief merely says, I've gotten your mandate. You need a road constructed from Romford to Chadwell Heath. You have given me this budget. And then you start asking or scheduling meetings with your stakeholders, high level, to get an understanding of what their high level requirements are. So this is where you ask about the size of the road, or dual or triple carriageway, any width or whatever. I don't know much about roads, but you define, you start expanding on your mandate as you prepare to write a project brief. You as you assemble your project team. You might have to recruit or to identify people from within the organization. I have assembled project board there, but it's not you, project manager, who assembles the project board. So you work with the project sponsor to identify who has to be involved at a high level in the direction and controlling of the project. The other thing that you do is to start thinking about justification. What are the costs? What are the benefits? How much time did we get? Is it going to be enough? What are the risks? We said projects bring about change. A road will go through people's farms, it will go through people's houses, through rivers, are there rivers in this country? Yeah, maybe little ones. So what are the risks? What is it that could potentially delay or stifle the progress of the project? You start logging those risks. So we are saying who is responsible in this stage, in this phase. It's mainly the project sponsor. That's the senior person who comes to you and says, this is the mandate, this is what we want to do. We call them project sponsors or senior managers or project board. And then we have the project manager. We have a BA because already there's a business case there. There's some research to be done. There is a project brief to be prepared. Like I mentioned, in some organizations, you won't have the luxury of having a business analyst. So it means you have to know how to write a project brief as a project manager. You have to know how to write a business case. So that's what happens in the starting up phase. The project hasn't really started. You are trying to understand what exactly are we required to do. You are writing a document that says to your project sponsor, this is how I understood your mandate. And then you present the project brief to them. Where I was before, until June, I prepared a project brief and they didn't really make use of PowerPoint. So you prepare a document, send it to them, then you have a meeting where you take them through the 25-page document, they ask questions, and then they sign off. So the minute they say we sign off this project brief, it means they're saying we are happy with your definition of the project, the resources that you have identified, the stakeholders, the people who have got an interest in the project that you have identified, the costs, the benefits. So the starting up phase ends as soon as your project brief is signed, because they're saying, excellent, go on to stage 2, where you have a team in place now, you have a project board in place, the team is aware of their roles and responsibilities, the project has been defined, but we now have to, as a team, focus on now building a stronger case for our project, making sure that the project is properly initiated. All the controls are set up. We set up the administration side of the project. We set up an initial project plan. Because depending on the size of the project, I've always found it challenging to plan 6 months ahead, but we will be required to. So sometimes you just carry on, even though in your mind you're thinking, really, these things are going to change. But if they normally they like to see what you are going to be doing within those 6 months, what we call milestones, indicators of where what you have achieved, major points. Sorry about that. Okay, so what happens in the initiation stage? In the initiation stage, that's where you create your full business case. So again, when we look at business analysis, we're going to look at the contents of a business case. We are going to do a cost-benefit analysis, revenue model, because this is the stage where you are looking at the viability of the project. Is it really worth it? What benefits is that road going to deliver? Sometimes you can quantify the benefits financially or translate them to money. Sometimes you just have non-financial benefits, but they are all important. They have to be documented. So the main responsibilities in this stage are for the business case. BAs lead on the creation of a business case, and then putting governance structures in place, like we mentioned, the fact that, for example, you need to start thinking about your meetings. How often is your project board or senior managers, how often are they going to be meeting? Because you need direction from them, you need guidance from them. So you need to start setting meeting dates. You need to start setting meeting dates even for your team. You also have to make sure that you have all the resources that you require. And then there's what are called project initiation documents. So these are the documents that will outline, for example, how you are going to manage risks, how you are going to manage quality, how you are going to manage change. So we have the change management strategy, risk management strategy, quality management strategy. We also have a communication plan. We have a stakeholder analysis, because it is in this stage where you have to identify who are those people who have got an interest in this project. Who are those people who are going to be affected by the project, both inside or within the organization and outside the organization. So you do what we call a stakeholder analysis. Again, that's a topic on its own. We're going to look at that as part of this training. So all those documents that we have referred to, they constitute what we call a project initiation documents. Once again, these have to be signed off or agreed by your senior managers, because, for example, you might have left out some stakeholders or some people in the organization who need to be communicated with. So your senior managers can direct you in that aspect. You also set up project controls. We said one of the responsibilities of a project manager is to monitor project progress, control project progress. So, for example, so reports, for example, these are project controls. Throughout the monitoring, the controlling of your project, you need to produce reports for your senior managers, because they're not involved on a day-to-day basis. They've delegated the management of the project to you. So, but however, you need to keep them informed through submitting what we call project status reports. You report on the status of the project. Where are we now? What work is still due? You also create a project plan. So this is very important, because when you define your project in the starting up phase, all you do is to give high level milestones. By such and such a date, we would have dug the foundation. By such and such a date, we would have finished the foundation. Such and such a date, we would have gotten to window level. So stage one is high level milestones and dates. And then stage two, you create a project plan, very detailed project plan. So what example can I give? Let's say, okay, project plans are normally organized along the lines of this methodology. So you find that a project plan can actually let me see if I can log into just to show you. Just to show you project plan, projectmanager.com. So this is the software that we use for project planning. And you have time to learn the software, practice the software, because project planning is the core activity of a project manager. Even BAs have to plan their BA side of the project, working with project managers. So this is a project plan. The other team are currently working on a website. That is the website for this training platform. So this is the project plan. So they've gone through the startup phase. So as you can see, the project plan is organized or arranged along the lines of the methodology. So that's one approach, and that's the most important approach, because you can then go through each and every stage and make sure that you finish stage one before you go on to stage two. So just as an example, a project plan outlines the tasks that need to be carried out in order to implement the change. So in this case, it's a web development project, and the startup phase involved, because they've already done this, it involved getting a mandate from me, and then they assembled the project team. Then they had a kickoff meeting where the team meets, the roles and responsibilities are defined, and then they capture lessons learned. We mentioned that it doesn't necessarily have to be a project within the organization. It can be a similar project out there from which you can learn. They then identified the approach, which is basically the methodology. And they're saying it took them 2 hours. Okay. Then they established project governance. That's the setting up the project board. And then they created a project brief document. So in this particular setup, this task involved assigning tasks to team members, and then each person works on a particular part of the document, and then they bring everything together They then presented the project brief, which was signed off. So once that project brief was signed off, it means they had authorization, to move on to the next stage. So a project plan is composed of tasks, and what the planned start date is, what the planned finish date is, what the planned duration is, and then the planned effort. Sometimes we can say the project brief will take 6 days, but doesn't necessarily mean that every hour, every minute of those 6 days, somebody will be working on the project brief. Hence, we have effort, which is the actual time that you took to do the role. Then in a project plan, you also have to say who is responsible. Because as a project manager, you need to know who to follow up in terms of making sure that these planned and finished start dates are met. Then we go to the next one. You can see that each stage has got tasks and same planned date, this and that and all that. So we don't want to spend more time on this. It's another area where we're going to spend quite a lot of time. We have people on this platform who have mastered this piece of software, and they will be there to support us, to support you until such a time that you can also support others. But it's important to know how to use this software before one starts applying for jobs. So yes, you create a project plan, you identify the work that needs to be done. You also, it might not be right on point in terms of timing, because it's still early days, maybe you don't have some resources. And in planning your project, you don't just sit in a secluded place and come up with a project plan. You work with your team, because they are the ones who are going to be implementing the project. So they have to be involved in defining what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. So we find that in some cases, project managers don't really have to know IT, for example, or whatever is being implemented, because we work through other people. However, if you know the domain or the area that you are working in, it helps, because nobody can lie to you or say, oh, this person doesn't know what they are doing, because you have knowledge in that particular area. So if you, for example, you are in finance and you are implementing a finance system, you know what the business processes are. Maybe you would have used the finance system and all that. So that's the initiation stage. The most important documents here are the business case and the project initiation documents, as well as the project plan, and making sure that all the admin, so PMO relates to making sure that you have all the templates. So you need a template for a project brief, you need a template for business case, you need a template for the project initiation documents. So you make, as a PMO, in this platform, we have a project manager, we have a BA, we have a PMO. So if you take up the role of a PMO, that's going to be your responsibility to make sure that we have all the necessary templates for the project. The project is set up in all the collaborative software that we use, that is Basecamp, and for BAs, it's Confluence. We'll have a look at that. Oops. And then when we come to implementation, if you still remember, this is where we said implementation, we subdivide this stage into further stages or further phases. Discovery phase, this is the phase where we go to the business or we go to the users and ask what their requirements are. So if we are still continuing with our road example, we go to the senior user, we go to the users, not really road users, but mainly the council, to find out exactly the specifications, what do they want. So in this case, you get right to the minutest requirement, because you want to make sure that you develop or produce what the business wants so that you can deliver the benefits. So once you gather all the requirements in an agile setup, you don't necessarily have to gather all the requirements, but you have to know what the high level requirements are, because you're going to come back to sprint level and start again to plan for that sprint and maybe bring in some more requirements. So that flexibility of the agile methodology, which we said we use in this stage, is important, especially for the customer. For the organization, sometimes it's not, because you have to be careful how you charge, because you can, if you work with an organization that's always bringing changes, you have to change this. It means you are now implementing the changes free of charge. So mostly organizations tend to charge more for projects that are implemented in an agile environment. Why? Because you cannot say to the customer, we don't accept changes. As part of the flexibility, you have to accommodate their changes. You can bargain to say, okay, if we are to implement this change, then it means maybe we need more resources, or we need to do away with this particular requirement. So there's always negotiation. Okay, so implementation. So in 1 and 2, we are following the waterfall approach. And then we get to 3, we are now agile. So we gather our requirements, we adopt an agile way of working, we build a product backlog, which we said is a list of user stories or customer requirements or business requirements. And then once we have the requirements, we can now decide how many sprints or how many repeating cycles do we need in order to develop this particular product. So sprints are basically repeat cycles. You develop part A of the deliverable, then you go to the next one, and then you bring these parts together and start testing. So implementation, remember, it will always be subdivided into the software development lifecycle, into, let's go back, into analysis, where you are now selecting just a little bit of the requirements from that product backlog, or from that huge bucket of requirements. You are selecting just a little bit to develop in cycle number 1 or sprint number 1. So whatever requirements you would have selected, you have to engage in the design of it. So even with roads, for example, you don't just say, okay, you need a 4-lane road, bring this, the tar, bring the concrete. No, you have to design the road, actually drawing from Romford, where is it going to pass, how long, how wide, and then until you get to Chadwell Heath. So once you have the designs, the customer can visualize how long, how the road is going to look, what needs to, what trees need to be cut, what farmers need to be paid, what houses need to be demolished, and all that. And then you get to develop stage. This is where now the team comes together to actually produce something. Testing, I'm not sure if it relates to roads, but this is where you have developed, and then you call your customer and say, come and see if what we have produced is exactly what you said you wanted. So until the customer says, yes, tick box, you did very well, you cannot deploy. So deploy is you make it available for customers to use. However, for example, if let's say you are developing a website and in phase one, or sorry, in sprint one, you develop the logging in functionality, the customer will not be able to use it on it, that functionality on its own. So you produce, it's working, but on its own, it cannot work. It cannot deliver the business value, the business benefits on its own. So you produce it. Deploying means you put it aside, you produce the next component, you put it aside, you produce the next component, you put it aside, and then once you finish, you bring everything together, which we said is the integration. Once you integrate, you test, and then make the whole package available, then you close the project. So implementation, that's what we do. These are the people who are responsible. The BA tech, here we said it's the BA, but it's mainly BA business. BA tech normally is a bit more technical. If it's an IT project, they understand the solution designing, they understand quite a lot of the technical aspects of the project. And then we spoke about, no, we didn't go this far. Okay, the product backlog is the main deliverable. The testing plan, so you start thinking about how you're going to test your product, and also how you would require your client to sign off what you would have implemented. And then once you have implemented, you have tested, you now think about how are we going to go live. For example, if it's the road, are we going to ask a politician to come and open the road? When are we going to open the road to the public? When are we going to hand over, and how are we going to hand over to the council who is going to maintain? So you think of quite a lot of things. If it's like an IT system, you think about user training the people who are going to use the IT system. You think of managing the change, getting people to accept. Let's say it's an HR system, and people have been used to using manual Excel spreadsheets, and now you're asking them to start inputting data onto an IT system. Some people might resist that. So you need to know how you're going to, we are going to properly ensure that people accept the change. So again, this is just the hybrid methodology, again, showing you what the deliverable in terms of, what the deliverables are, like we described. Initiation phase, what is the deliverable? So this is the work that is involved in project management and BA, delivering documents, delivering reports, team meetings, and the actual development. So these slides will be made available to you so that you go over and over again until you know that, okay, we're in the startup phase. Have I done my lessons learned log. Have we had our kickoff meeting? Have we done our stakeholder analysis? Do we know who our stakeholders are? Do we know how we're going to communicate with them? Have we written our business case? Have we set up our risk assumptions, issues, and dependencies log? So it's important for each stage to know what your responsibilities are going to be, what you are expected to do, what you are expected to produce, and all that. Okay, let's unmute you. Any questions on the methodology? Like I said, this is just setting up the foundation. We are still setting up the foundation. Any concerns, any questions? No? Okay, we'll take 15 more minutes just to look at this topic. Esosa. It's Esosa.
Esosa.
Yes. Oh, Christian, you'll be quiet. Okay. So we've looked at what project management is. We've looked at project methodology or project implementation framework, which is basically like a guide to project managers. So in some organizations, you find that, especially those whose project management is or has matured, they have what we call project or program management offices. This is in most cases where you find that there is more than one project manager. So there are different project managers implementing different projects. So there is need for a central function within a business that supports these project management teams. So this function is called a project management office. So a project management office is, like I said, a central office that supports project teams. And not all organizations have got PMOs or project program management office. It depends on the size of the project teams, the maturity of the organizations in terms of project implementation. So a program management office acts as a center of excellence where project teams are guided as to how to use the methodology we have just spoken about. The PMO is the custodian of all the templates. So let's say you join the project team today. The people who are going to be supporting you to make sure that you settle in the project, in the program office, are called program or project management officers or analysts or leads or PMO managers. They know the framework, they know where the templates are, they know how to support project managers, and you'll be working closely with them to make sure that the project plan is kept up to date, to make sure that the reports are produced. So it's like a center of excellence, a hive of activity just to support the project team. So like I said, this is another career path that one can choose to follow. Just as a quick example, if we say PMO jobs, they pay very well as well, because there's a thin line between a PMO and a project manager. So it's easy to switch from one to the other. And the money is just the same normally. The responsibilities are different in that the PMO focuses more on the admin side of the project. Okay, we'll just look at this one. So that's the PMO. So looking after the reports, process improvement. So process basically is the methodology and the processes that you follow in implementation of projects. So there's quite a lot of opportunities as a PMO lead, PMO analyst, project manager, project coordinator. There's no moment when you are out of a role. So let's say yes, that's another one. So what do they do? Project governance. We've spoken about project governance, making sure that people are aware of what their roles and responsibilities are. Tracking of systems. It's like I said, it's an admin side. Project managers focus on implementing projects. PMOs focus on supporting project managers, making sure that they focus on the actual monitoring and controlling. Establish a stakeholder engagement plan for the PMO, creating a center of excellence for project management. This is the first project that the first group worked on, was to create a center of excellence for this particular setup. So you are also going to have that opportunity. So let's go back to PMO. Okay, so we said just checking the chat box. Okay, it's okay. You send me a message, so it's fine. We'll send you the recording so that you catch up. And as always, I'm always available for any questions, for any area where you feel we need to clarify more. So we have just started talking about PMOs and how they are that management structure that supports project implementation teams, making sure that the frameworks or the methodology is properly implemented, making sure that project tools are used properly and they are known, making sure that projects and programs are successfully implemented by tracking and reporting on progress. This is sometimes more interesting than project management because it's more hands-on. Project management, you are just coordinating. So and so said they are doing this at such and such a time. It's your responsibility as a project manager to follow them up, have meetings with them, report and all that, which is good because especially if you don't like doing anything. It's very challenging being a project manager because you are dealing with people. You find that there are people who don't want to do anything. Like in my current contract, there's someone who was made redundant and they still have like a month to go, but you can never get them to do anything. They are either, they don't know where they are. They just come once a week because they can't do anything to the person. The person is employed full time. They are already serving their notice. So they might decide to say, look, I'm going to switch off my work mobile phone. So it's very challenging because management will still expect me to deliver by such and such a day, working with someone who is not available, but you still have to show that, you know, you have tried or escalate. So back to PMO. There are different types of PMOs, like we said, depending on, sorry, my stakeholder is decided to fall asleep. Let me, okay. So depending on the size of the organization, there are different types of PMOs. And like, remember, by PMO, we mean program or project management offices. We're not talking about the people yet. We're talking about the structure that has been set up to support project teams. So there are different types. Some of them are more hands-on, more involved in the day-to-day management of the project, to the extent of even taking up project management or management of some projects. For example, supportive PMOs, they're just there to support the team, providing a consultative role in terms of the methodology. How do I use Agile? Then they train you. If you're just joining, they provide you with the training for everything that you need to know to function very well within that team, including systems that they use, maybe to manage budgets. They'll also point you to the right folders where the templates are, where the knowledge base is. So their degree of control of projects is very low, but they fulfill a very important role of supporting. In a situation where you have a big team, when you join that team, you get lost because everybody is so busy. Nobody is ready to spend 5 minutes showing you how to use a system. So PMOs come in handy. Then we have controlling PMOs. In addition to supporting project teams, these PMOs, they have a higher degree of control in terms of involvement with the project, involvement with the project team, making sure that you comply. For example, they might even set up a system where every 2 weeks they do an audit or carry out an audit on your project folders to see that you have version controlled documents very well, you are following the methodology, you've written the reports and all that, you are using the templates properly. So they are like that cloud that always hangs around, but their main purpose is to make sure that the projects are delivered effectively and on time, because that's exactly what our performance as project managers is measured by. Then directive PMOs, they take control of projects. Some directly manage the project, so the control is high. So depending on the organization, you'll find these different types of PMOs. Not really that it's important, but it's a good to know. So this is just an example of the roles and responsibilities of a PMO. We're going to look at that, but like I said, sometimes there's a thin line between the role of a PMO and the role of a manager, a project manager. For example, preparing relevant reports, including status reports, RAIDs log, project dashboards. That's a normal day-to-day project management role. But in this situation, maybe a project manager looks after 10 projects and there are 10 other project managers. So a program management officer will collect all the reports and produce a program report, collect all the RAIDs log, the risk logs, and produce a program risk log. working with project managers, so they support project managers, analyzing the project budget and all that. Again, as a project manager, you do that. However, in a setup where you have PMOs, you again work with them. They are there to support you. So maybe 5 more minutes. Let's look at examples of what PMOs do. We won't be able to finish this today because there's quite a lot of responsibilities for PMOs. And in some and most situations, these responsibilities also fall under the remit of the project manager. Change control, for example. So we're going to look at change control as a topic. However, we said senior managers will tell you that this is the mandate of the project. We want you to do this and that and that. You go away, produce a project brief, define the project scope, or what is in scope, what is out of scope, what is it that is inside your responsibilities as a project, what is it that is outside. Then it so happens that somebody would have forgotten about something. Let's say it's a website. Somebody has, maybe the organization has said they want a purple background website. Later on, during production of the website, they decide, oh, wow, our corporate color is green. Well, then it means we have to change the color of the website to green so that at least the branding is uniform. You need to have change control in place as a project manager or PMO, because if you don't, people will just be bringing in changes from left, from the right, from the center, from the top. At the end of the day, you won't finish your project on time. However, with change control processes, you are able to say, okay, make an impact assessment. If we change the color of the website, what is the impact on our resources? It means our developers will have to go back and work again on the user interface or the color of the website, which might take another week. So the work would have been taken a step back for 1 week. Maybe you need more money. So you need to have a process for managing change requests. Whenever a change comes or a change request comes, you need to be able to log it or to register it, assess it. What is the impact on the project plan? What is the impact on resources? What is the impact on the money? And then seek approval from the management. Once they approve, you then plan in the change. So in this case, the change is managed, the change is controlled. So in some organizations, it's the responsibilities of a PMO. In some, where there's no PMO, that's the responsibility of the project manager. Then there is change management, which relates to managing resistance to change. Whenever you bring change in every culture, in every organization, there will be people who try and resist because they were happy with the way they were doing things, and now you're coming to say, let's change. So they will definitely resist. As a project manager or as a PMO, you need to come up with a change management strategy. How are you going to ensure that people are happy to adopt the new ways of doing whatever they were doing before? If it was HR and they were using 6,000 spreadsheets, now you are saying you can log everything in this piece of software, extract your reports. Some people will still resist even though that saves them time. So you have change management methods, things like training, for example. People resist something because they don't know how to use it. So by training them, you are reducing their propensity to resist the change. Then finally, we'll look at communications, which is important because we said there are people who are interested in your project from within the organization, even your team. Your team has an interest in the project. There are people outside your project within the organization who have an interest. There are people outside the organizations, let's say customers, who will also have an interest depending on what the project is. So you need to constantly communicate with these stakeholders, with these people. So in project management, we don't call them these people, we call them stakeholders because they hold a stake, not the meat, but the interest. So you need to, one, identify who they are, these stakeholders, and then as a PMO or project manager, you need to create communication processes. How are you going to communicate with them? What are you going to use? If it's emails, do you have the templates in place? Are you going to use social media to communicate? If it's mostly outward facing, social media is a powerful communication tool these days that also needs to be handled with care. You also have the intranet, wiki pages, where you can share knowledge about or messages about the project. Once again, you need a communication strategy. Remember, we spoke about the project initiation documents. You need a communication matrix which says who is who, when are we going to communicate with them, what are we going to communicate with them, and how often. So, like I say, there's quite a lot. I don't want to drag this, it's midweek. So we'll end here. We're still going to continue looking at what PMOs do, and then we'll look at how to set up a PMO. So because PMOs look after the methodology, we'll once again find ourselves talking about the hybrid methodology and then how to set up a project management office. This will help you because sometimes, and in most cases, you have an advantage if you know how to set up a PMO and run a PMO. So we'll end here today, and I will unmute you. Okay, any